good evening. Are you wondering how a small town girl like me can create a big-time podcast like Sleeping with Heather? It's easy. I use Anchor. Anchor is free, and there are creation tools that allow me to record and edit my podcast right from my phone or computer. Anchor distributes my podcast for me to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. I make money with my podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Try Anchor today. Good evening, friends, and welcome to episode 4 of the Sleeping with Heather podcast, the podcast that puts you to sleep. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about tonight's episode. On Giving Tuesday, I raffled a customized bedtime story to benefit Ben's Branches, my favorite dog rescuing nonprofit. The winner of this bedtime story is my dear friend and fellow animal lover, Joanna the Starfish. Now you see, dogs don't have thumbs to count money or pockets to carry money in. Dogs in need rely on the generosity of kind donors like Joanna. If you'd like to help dogs in need, I'll include a link to Ben's Branches in the show notes. I'd also like to give a shout out to Tim Red 69 for this stellar review. He writes, "This podcast is amazing. Heather's voice and delivery are soothing, crystal clear, and utterly charming. She's bringing new and original techniques to the world of ASMR. As an aficionado of that genre, I can honestly say that she's the first ASM artist I've encountered in a long time who's bringing new ideas to the table, or bed. Sleeping with Heather has become a go-to for my daily wind down and journey into dreamland." Thank you, Tim Red 69, for your kind words. Reviews help push the show up the charts, allowing me to usher more sleepyheads to dreamland. So, if you like this show, please give me 5 stars and a kickin' review. And if you know anyone who might benefit from better sleep, be a pal and introduce us. And while you're at it, show them how to subscribe. Now I have a lot planned for tonight, so if you find you're unable to stay awake for the entirety of the program, don't fight it. You can always come back and listen tomorrow. Now, on with the show. Good evening, night listener. You're tuned into Sleeping with Heather, the podcast that puts you to sleep. I'll be with you for an hour and a half, so there's no need to rush. Fall asleep on your time. Relax, close your eyes, listen to the sound of my voice, and get ready to dream.
Really, I don't know why it is that all of us are so committed to the sea, except I think it's because, in addition to the fact that the sea changes, and the light changes, and ships change, it's because we all came from the sea. And it is an interesting biological fact that all of us have in our veins the exact same percentage of salt in our blood that exists in the ocean. And therefore, we have salt in our blood, in our sweat, in our tears. We are tied to the ocean. And when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch it, we are going back from whence we came.
That was John F. Kennedy at the Australian Ambassador's Dinner for the America's Cup Cruise, September 14th, 1962. Tonight's episode is all things water, Water is pretty gangster. It always follows the path of least resistance. It's that friend who shows up 30 minutes late to brunch because it spent all morning making TikTok videos. Consider this. If you have a hole in your roof, water will find a way inside. It has the power to move mountains. It's needed to sustain life, but too much takes life away. You can ask my houseplants. Water is a master of transmutation. It is both the wild and the peace. We're mostly water, and if you pause for a moment to contemplate the moon's influence over ocean tides, is it any wonder more babies are born during full moons? I'm just kicking around a theory. Where do you think the word lunatic came from? Luna stems from the Latin word for moon. The suffix "atic" means of the kind of. It's a thing. You know it's also a thing? The Great Resignation. And if you're one of the many burnt-out professionals considering a career change, have you considered a water-based career? Oh, what? Water-based foods are a thing, but water-based careers sound weird? Now hear me out. Okay, so maybe you don't have what it takes to be a marine biologist. And perhaps you don't have the sea legs to make it as a sailor. Maybe you've considered life as a pirate, but pegged legs and hooks aren't your thing. Speaking of pirates, do you know why they wear eye patches? It's not always to cover a missing eye. No. It's to acclimate one eye to the darkness so that when they go below deck for oranges or parrot treats, all they have to do is swing the patch over to their daylight eye, and voila, they're able to navigate the dark. I digress. Back to water-based careers. Perhaps the most intriguing of all water professions is water witching, also referred to as water dowsing or doodle bugging. Dowsers of this pseudo-scientific craft are said to have a unique ability, or gift if you will, to locate groundwater using a Y-shaped twig or rod, although some dowsers use no tools at all. I've watched several YouTube videos where water witches, divining rod in hand, transverse a stretch of land until their rods are drawn toward the earth. They excavate, and boom, water. How does it work? Well, I've Googled and Googled and stopped short of wearing off my fingerprints and have yet to uncover a scientific explanation. So please, if anyone can explain dowsing in layman's terms, send me a tweet. I'll include my handle in the show notes. How about another interesting water-related fact? Long before anti-vaxxers, there were anti-fluoriders who spread fear about the anti-tooth decaying agent added to drinking water. Crazy, right? It's true. Funny how history repeats itself. Now, I love mermaids, the Loch Ness Monster, and seahorses. But I think of all the sea creatures, I love starfish most. And what's so impressive about starfish, you ask? Well, for starters, they should be called sea stars. That's what scientists call them. They don't have fins or gills, so they aren't truly classified as fish. In fact, they're closely related to sand dollars and sea urchins. But for tonight's story, we'll refer to them as starfish. Starfish were practicing social distancing before it was in vogue. Male and female starfish are hard to tell apart because they look identical, like couples at a Garth Brooks concert. While many animal species produce by only one method, starfish are a bit different. The first way in which they can reproduce is sexually, by releasing sperm and egg, called gamete, into the water. The sperm fertilize the gamete, producing swimming larvae, which eventually settle on the ocean floor and grow into adult starfish. Starfish can also reproduce asexually through regeneration, such as losing an arm, which stop the press. But if regeneration doesn't blow your mind, nothing will. I mean, yeah, it can take up to a year for an arm to grow back. But when was the last time you grew an appendage? See? That's what I'm talking about. They're pretty much the most magical creature in the ocean. What's more? Imagine this. Once they've caught their prey with their cute little suction cups, their stomachs exit their bodies to gobble their kill before re-entering through their mouths. That's some alien vs. predator voodoo right there. They can also live up to 35 years, which is a real feat when you consider they don't have blood or brains. Instead, they use filtered seawater to pump nutrients through their nervous system. I know what you're thinking. They could just save themselves the trouble if they'd moved to fresh water. But sadly, they can't survive in fresh water. That's right. Of all the flavors, they prefer to be salty. Like your mother-in-law, when you don't bring out the good china on Thanksgiving. Personally, I don't have a problem with compostable, environmentally safe dinnerware. And luckily, I don't have a mother-in-law either. Not yet, anyway. I digress. More about how starfish light up my life. Starfish can have up to 40 arms. When they're not making babies, can you imagine the kind of hugs they give? Oh, I'd love a starfish hug right now. And you know who I bet would give amazing hugs if she were a starfish? My friend Joanna. I wrote a bedtime story about her, and I'd like to get into it. But first, let's clear the mind with a long breath in. Exhale slowly and feel the weight of your body pressed against the comfort of your mattress. Simply relax, let go, and listen to the sound of my voice as I share with you the story of Joanna the Starfish. Starfish come in a rainbow of colors and fancy formations. But Joanna was unlike any starfish to ever inhabit this big blue marble pirouetting through space. She had 5 perfect points and shimmered like a mermaid's tail. Her hue shifted as the sun waltzed across the sky. Every May 16th, all creatures in the ocean would gather for the National Sea Monkey Parade, where Joanna was always crowned Princess Sea Monkey. She had what the French call je ne sais quoi. You see, anyone who met her could tell she had star quality, and not only the fishy kind. She was sure that she could be a movie star if she could get out of this place. Now I have Piano Man vibes. Thanks, Billy Joel. She had a very wise grandmother who instilled in her from the time she was a wee gamete that if you wish upon the brightest star in the sky, your wish will come true. Joanna found this suspect. She thought to herself, how could wishing upon a star possibly make my dreams come true? Celeb status requires headshots and agents and social media managers and gym memberships and Reiki masters and acai berry bowls. Surely, wishing upon a star would bring nothing but hypothermia. But alas, Joanna's hunger for Hollywood grew insatiable. Every night, as she lay her little starfish head to sleep, she was made restless by visions of her name in the marquee. And why not? If Ariel, Nemo, Moby Dick, SpongeBob, and Flipper could make it big, why couldn't she? Well, one late August night, beneath a sturgeon moon, tossing and turning with a terrific yearning, Joanna decided to take a midnight swim. She swam to shore and suctioned her little starfish body against a cool, flat rock, where she laid pondering the wonders of the universe. She just couldn't fathom how a tiny starfish like her could make it in this great big world. Looking upon the night sky, she fixed her gaze on the brightest star, just as her grandmother had instructed. She watched the star for hours and began to notice something strange. It wasn't twinkling in rhythm to the other stars. No, it marched to its own beat, much like herself. It was as if the star was trying to communicate with Joanna through some sort of idioglossia, a secret star language only stars could understand, no matter their breed or orientation. Once she focused her attention, she understood the second language immediately. It was sort of an ancient code she was born to understand. The brightest star twinkling far above in the heavens said, "My name is Callie. I've been burning for thousands of years, and I knew you as I know myself." Then, Callie recited a poem by Chris Fitiello, the poetry fox from Raleigh, North Carolina. And it went like this. 4th of July in a body. That's you. A Roman candle of a starfish, ready to blast, tumbling balls of sparks all over us. A chrysanthemum, becoming and blossoming over a city's horizon. A firecracker, rattling off and startling us to explode in a laugh. But you are somehow also the quiet of the forest, a place within you so remote that it lacks a single footprint, where the trees write each other notes on their leaves and whisper through their roots. A blunderbuss and a wilderness. That's you. As gentle ocean waves lapped Joanna's tiny starfish legs, she sat still, basking in the reverence of Callie's recital. But inside, she was erupting with joy, like a grand finale on Uncle Sam's birthday. In all her starfish life, she had never felt so seen. She wanted to pause time, and in the same moment, wished to gallop toward her dreams with the stamina of 1,000 seahorses. She thought to herself, perhaps grandmother knew a thing or two about wishing on stars. Hypnotized by Callie's brilliant glow, she laid beneath the moonlight until her lids grew as heavy as iron anchors. The next morning she woke to a squawk of seagulls and was very parched, the way one gets after too many hours in the sun, or from a night at port after many months at sea. She slid back into the ocean, where she ran into her best friend, Kevin. Kevin was a clownfish, but not always the funny kind. Kevin was more like trick or treat in clown form. If you crossed him, you'd wake to find electric eels in your seaweed bed. But if you were his friend, he always knew how to make you smile, if only through cheesy clownfish puns. Do you know what clownfish listen to at the gym to get their grunt on? Anemone. Get it? And why don't penguins like eating clownfish? Because they taste funny. Kevin was full of jokes, but Joanna found herself in her feels, a sort of sleep inertia, if you will. Was Callie only a figment of her wild imagination? If Callie was real, where had she gone? Was she hiding behind the brilliant blue sky? For Kevin, this was no laughing matter. In all their many years of friendship, not a day went by that he ceased to make his friend laugh. he could sense a quiet stirring within her. "I had an existential epiphany last night," Joanna divulged reluctantly. It had been many years since her go-go dancing days at Studio 54. She had gotten clean since then, but feared sharing what happened last night would rob her of all credibility she'd built up over the years, along with a sort of centrifugal force now propelling her toward her destiny. She kept it very simple and plainly stated, "Kevin, I'm extra. What I mean is, I'm meant for more than this grand aquarium. I can't say why for sure, but I feel it, like a phantom limb waiting to regenerate. It's my truth, and a becoming I'd been swimming toward long before I knew to swim." Kevin sized up his friend. He was keenly aware of those Andy Warhol days she spent rubbing elbows with beatniks like Jack Kerouac and Ginsberg. He thought perhaps she was swept by the muse, spinning in some sort of psychedelic cyclone of metaphor. Kevin swam backward and exclaimed, "Denny's is having a 2-for-1 deal on their Grand Slams, so I better run." And with that, he shot through the ocean like an arrow, leaving Joanna with the mental bandwidth to reconcile the augmented desire swirling throughout her very being. As Joanna was settling into flow, she found herself surrounded by a school of salmon zombies. You see, salmon zombies, though very much alive, wrought to death on a pilgrimage to reach their spawning ground, which Joanna had been standing in the center of, blissfully unaware. And what could be scarier than salmon zombies? Mako sharks who gather to feast on salmon zombies. Joanna, lost in thought, barely registered the disorienting predator dance happening before her very eyes. And before she could say, "Check, please," she found herself enveloped in the darkness of a Mako's belly. Fear dissipated. You would think Joanna's appetite for the bright lights of Tinsel Town would send her into a fury. But instead, she hovered, still in the cavern of her predator, reveling in this foreign silence. The belly of a shark is unfathomably quiet. The type of quiet you only experience when an entire town goes black and the nearest hum of a computer may as well be light years away. The kind of silence the starry night can appreciate. Naked of all white noise from city skylines. Joanna closed her eyes, and when she did, she was there once more, under the brilliance of a sturgeon moon, communing with the brightest star she'd ever seen. Could last night's poem have been an incantation of sorts? It seemed to have rendered her with a kind of ennui for the familiar, and perhaps it is why she took to this unexpected chariot in stride. Suddenly, the shark's carriage shook violently. Joanna understood it could only mean one thing: a whale. Whales so loved Mako sharks. They referred to them as the Nutella of the sea. Joanna could tell her host had been swallowed by the decrease in cabin pressure. And as if she understood the assignment, she swam out of the shark's mouth and into the whale's belly and kept swimming until she could peer through its tiny blowhole. To Joanna's great surprise, it was night once again. She wondered, had she really spent an entire day being digested? She caught sight of Callie again, twinkling brighter than all the other stars in the sky. Behold, my harbor in the tempest, my Messiah. Joanna thought to herself, in all her infinite wisdom, Callie would know how to free her from the belly of this whale. And in a language only stars know, Callie implored Joanna to reach for her, to reach for all the stars if she must. We aren't as far out of reach as we appeared, she ensured. Joanna knew she had to give it all she had. Perhaps she had been preparing for this moment all her life. And as steadfast as a nautical compass, leapt out of the whale's belly and right into the net of a marine biologist who was skimming the dark sea for exotic nocturnal creatures in which to catalog and study. The marine biologist called to his partner, "Hey, Bobby, get a load of this." "What is it, Ian?" replied his partner. "Why, it's only the loveliest starfish I had ever laid eyes on." Bobby entered the deck and was so stunned by Joanna's beauty, he dropped the tuna fish sandwich his mother had packed for him. It slid along the planks of the ship's wooden dock, fell overboard, and was gobbled by the whale whose belly Joanna had escaped moments before. "Bro," Bobby said, "I forgot my wedding anniversary last month, and my wife's birthday is Monday. I'd consider it a huge solid if you'd allow me to surprise her with this marvelous treasure." It was an irresponsible and unethical ask, but Ian understood what gifting Joanna would mean to Bobby, for Ian too had survived the fury of his wife after forgetting an anniversary or two. Bobby removed the Capri Sun and carrot sticks from his lunch pail and filled it with ocean water. As Ian solemnly placed Joanna inside, he felt ashamed for plucking such an exquisite flower of a creature from the deep blue garden of the ocean. Yet, he understood the desperation of a man who'd forgotten the anniversary of the very day he stood in front of God and all his loved ones to promise his life to another. Joanna rocked gently in Bobby's lunch pail until they reached the port of Brisbane, where she and Bobby took a bus with 3 transfers. When they came to the end of the bus line, they requested an Uber for the remaining leg of the trip, a 39-mile stretch to Rosewood, where Bobby lived with his wife, who was studying to be a kangarooologist. Bobby felt weary from his time at sea, and as he approached the threshold of his abode, he couldn't shake the feeling he had forgotten something important. Keys? Check. Wallet? Check. Exotic starfish? Crap. Exotic starfish. He had left Joanna in the Uber. He turned to chase his chauffeur, only to find a mile-long cloud of dust in his wake. He fished his phone from his pocket and fumbled through his apps in an attempt to call the driver. But it was no use. Reception in rural Australia is hit or miss. Bobby was down, but he wasn't out. He had at least remembered his wife's birthday. A box of Whitman samplers and a bouquet of daisies would have to suffice this year. Hell, he might even spring for a fancy card. Meanwhile, Joanna was on her way to an unknown location with Derek, the Uber driver, who had just finished his last trip of the evening. Derek was too busy jamming out to OAR to notice Bobby's lunch pail. He pulled into his garage and began his nightly routine while scrounging through the seats of his '89 Buick LeSabre for the loose change left by passengers. Finally, he discovered the container housing the most beautiful and exotic starfish in all the land. He held Bobby's lunch pail up to the fluorescent overhead lights of his garage and called out to his cats. Well, well, well. Christmas came early this year. How could anyone be so stupid as to leave a Coleman 3900 L Series all-weather lunch pail behind? He carried it into his house, along with the 78 cents in change he found. Derek set the lunch pail on his counter, fed his cats, and began making TikTok videos, completely unaware of his newly acquired treasure, which, to be clear, was not the Coleman 3900 L Series all-weather lunch pail. Joanna patiently waited to be discovered. She could feel Derek practicing his dance routine by how he shook the house with his choreography. His style was a hybrid of Taebo and the Monster Mash, and he must have really been getting into it, because he shook the house so hard the lunch pail shimmied off the counter and emptied its contents onto the kitchen floor. Startled by the noise, Derek's 2 cats, Jenna and Julie, picked their little whisker faces up from their bowls and pranced over to inspect the commotion. They found Joanna lying on the floor. Her salty scent was more intoxicating than catnip, and her shimmering, iridescent body was a feast for the eyes. Each cat wanted Joanna for her own. Oh, great, Joanna groaned. Had all my life come to this? I was once princess of the sea monkey parade. How did I become a cat toy? The story is making absolutely no sense at all. I want to go back to the ocean. I want my old life back. Jen and Julie had begun a tug of war over Joanna, and she could feel herself splitting like a wishbone. Then Jenna yanked Joanna from Julie's toothy grip and ran outside to bury her in the garden. Luckily, just as Jenna breached the cat door, a mighty stork swooped down and caught Joanna with his feet, narrowly rescuing her from becoming compost. Joanna could see for miles as she soared through the air in her rescuer's feet. She had never been up this high before. This bird's-eye view filled her with a profound gratitude for her new lease on life. She looked down upon a mob of kangaroos hopping through a meadow and wished she could share this moment with Callie. As the stork carried her toward the coast, a brilliant sunset was painting the horizon in shades of pink and red. Its palette reminded Joanna of the renewed passion burning bright in her heart. As soon as it was safe, she wriggled from the stork's grip, and into the ocean Joanna did slip. Weightless through the air, she caught a glimpse of the sky and knew in her heart Callie was nigh. Apologies. I took a short break to read A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clark Moore. 'Tis the season. Now back to the shore. Uh-oh. It appears I can't get the taste of rhyming verse out of my mouth. Thank you for still listening as the story goes south. A soft, gentle breeze carried Joanna through the air, and she landed so softly upon a flat rock. The waves lapped at her little starfish legs, just like on that night beneath the sturgeon moon. It was a new moon now, and the sky was black as coal. Without the competition of the moon, the stars seemed to shine brighter than ever. There were so many stars, but one stood out among the rest. Her twin flames sparkled like a New Year's Eve dress. Oh, Callie, my friend, how I've missed you so. You won't believe the adventure I had, said Joanna in their secret star language. Indeed I would, she assured her friend. Although sometimes I might disappear, I don't actually leave. I'm always right here. Who do you think sent the stork after all, and told the breeze to soften your fall? I'll always look after you, and this you should know. You were born a star, and to Hollywood you shall go. Joanna rocked gently in the darkness and leaned her little starfish head against the cool window of her limousine. She called out to her driver from behind the partition, "Right here is fine." And Derek parked and opened the door, where a red velvet carpet rolled out to welcome the starlet. Joanna drew her shades to block the flash of cameras clamoring for a glimpse. She was making her way through reporters and photographers when an eager mother and daughter caught her attention. "Pardon us," said the woman. "I hate to bother you. I understand a star as big as yourself has many places to be. But you see, my daughter is your biggest fan. We own all your movies, and she knows every word by heart. She wants to be a big star like you one day. Would you mind autographing her copy of your latest flick?" The woman handed Joanna a copy of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Starfish. Stardom never got to Joanna. This moment felt as fresh and invigorating as the first time she was asked for her autograph. "Of course," she said proudly, and with her movie in hand, knelt to the little girl and asked, "Who shall I make this out to?" "My name is Callie," replied the little girl. Joanna looked up at the night sky once more, and through her tears gave a wink to the brightest star twinkling in the sky. The end. So you see, my friends, the moral of the story is to listen to your heart. Always reach for the stars. If you miss, you might just land in the net of a marine biologist. And just like our starlet, I too get by with a little help from my friends. I want to thank the following people without whom the story would not have been possible: Joanna LaForgia, Javier Leva, host of the Pretend and Criminal Conduct podcasts, dating and relating coach Deborah Biesinger, Sharon Eisner, John Baxter, Bobby Parker, JJ, Kevin Watkins, Ian Ryuda, Derek Kaufman, Derek Woodstra, Jenna Kovic, and Julie Sarah. Special thanks to Steph Mates of Happy Mess Media for lending her art and inspiring tonight's story, and to the Poetry Fox, Chris Vitiello, for kindly allowing me to share his poetry in this episode. You're all stars in my book. Sweet dreams, my friends, until we meet again. Good night. No, seriously. You have to go to bed now. Yeah, it's way past your bedtime. Well, I understand not being sleepy. I find it hard to go to bed too once in a while. I'll tell you what. The story about the starfish kind of has me longing for the beach. Have you ever been to Carolina Beach? Yeah, I usually try to make it over there about maybe once, twice a year. I haven't been there since, I guess it was March of this past year. Yeah, I went with myself. It was so much fun, I loved it. I find that I meet the most interesting people when I go out alone. Safely, of course. If you go, say, in January, you usually catch the most brilliant sunrises. And there's a pretty neat pancake house not too far I've taken company to. They've got like this lobster omelet kind of thing. It's not bad. The coffee's pretty good too. Though I usually stay in the Marriott. I love the beachfront access. And I want to say, yeah, in fact, every room faces the ocean. It's the way it's built. Oh, and there's another place down there called, I want to say the Shuck and Shack. Before COVID, it was really busy. And I'm pretty sure they're still in business. I was there January, when was I there? Oh, I know. It was October 2020. How could I forget? I went to the beach, and it was so lovely. It was perhaps the last warm weekend of the year. I was so sick when I got home. I was supposed to go to Nashville, but I wound up having to cancel. I healed pretty quickly, though. All it took was a bottle of whiskey, some cinnamon, cloves, honey, and lemon. I mean, who doesn't do hot toddies? Anyone will tell you hot toddies do the trick. They work every time. Yeah, I don't know. It's an old recipe, I guess. That's a good question. How did hot toddies come along. What's good for the throat is also some brandy. Though I don't know if it's good for the throat, but it helps. I've been sipping on tamarind tea all night. My sweet little Molly is snoring beside me. I had the dogs out all day today. They drove with me an hour to my office in Smithfield. I had to run a few errands for work. We walked the greenway there for a little bit. And then, I stopped by Burger King and got them each a giant beef patty. I love that. I never do it. I don't do it very often. But I did it with the foster dog I had over the summer. In fact, I did it a lot with her because she was so skinny. But the Burger King, fattened her up pretty quickly. Yeah. But no, my dogs are very well behaved. I don't mind treating them once in a while. Although lately they've been pretty spoiled. Over Christmas, I fed them steak 3 days in a row. And I'm a vegetarian, but I love it. What are you gonna do? Today, I'll tell you what I've been doing lately. I made like a whole batch of rice. Just because I'm kind of lazy and I don't feel like going grocery shopping. Then I bought, so I made like this big pot of balsamic jasmine rice or whatever. And I give them rice here and there. They love it. And it was perfect because they were sick. They had a little upset stomach the other day. Probably from all the rice the steak I'd been giving them. They've been on a scrambled egg kick lately. And they each had 1.5 hard-boiled eggs in it. I just love them so much. They had a great Christmas. I kind of went a little hog wild in Mako. They got a whole new basket of toys. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. Yeah, we got home. And now we're back from Smithfield. And I took them to another greenway around here. And you know what was funny about today? While I was walking this greenway in Smithfield, the church bells were playing Christmas music. And while I was walking them on the greenway here, the park nearby was playing more Christmas music. Sounded like it was coming from an ice cream truck. And anyway, I had my earbuds in and was editing the first run through of this podcast. And I found it pretty synchronistic. That twinkle, twinkle, tiny star was playing. It was pretty cool. Anyway, I forget where I was going with this. I think I started telling you about the beach. God, I love going to the beach with friends, don't get me wrong. Usually it's a one-on-one trip. But honestly, I love going by myself. I love going at my own pace, which is usually pretty fast. People watching from behind sunglasses and not having to talk. I think that's what I like most about going to the beach alone. Oh, but the reason I brought it up is because you're still awake. And I was wondering if you wanted to. We could take a ride right now to Carolina Beach. No. It's not too far. It's probably like 2 hours from here. I'll drive. Are you hungry? I don't know, we'll stop and we'll get Bojangles on the way or something like that. Okay, we're Wendy's. That sounds good too. Oh, you know what I'd like to do once we get there? Let's sit on the beach and try to name as many clouds as we can. You know what else would be really great? If we took that I bought you last April. Do you think the wind is going to be conducive